Macron called Trump on Saturday to say he's worried about tensions in the Middle East, after Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear accord. Macron's office said the two leaders spoke on Saturday and the French leader expressed his great concern about stability in the region. Hostilities between Iran and Israel have already escalated in recent days. Macron and Trump also discussed trade issues as European governments scramble to save billions of dollars in trade with Iran that resumed after the 2015 accord. Iranian armed forces members marched in a military parade marking the 36th anniversary of Iraq's 1980 invasion of Iran, just outside Tehran, Iran. Photo, the U.S.-European discord over Tehran is not unprecedented. In the 1990s, significant disagreements surfaced when Washington adopted legislation, including the Iran and Libya Sanctions Act, ILSA, which punished European firms for doing business in those countries. In response, Brussels agreed reciprocal steps to protect European businesses and adopt countermeasures against the U.S. where restrictions were imposed by Washington. A similar pattern may now play out again following Trump's decision. It is clear the U.S. president feels strongly about the Iran issue, claiming the agreement is a great embarrassment and a giant fiction given that we cannot prevent an Iranian nuclear bomb under the decaying, rotten structure of the current agreement. Given such rhetoric, it is unlikely he will backtrack from his decision. However, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said last week that Washington will continue to work with our allies to build an agreement that is truly in the best interest of our long-term national security. Following Trump's decision, the ball is now in Europe's court, and it is clear that many of the continent's leaders are aghast at Trump's dismissal of the deal that took over a decade to negotiate. Mogherini said on Friday that, "It seems that screaming, shouting, insulting and systematically destroying and dismantling everything that is already in place, is the mood of our times, but we have to move on from the I win, you lose approach." European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini is determined to save the 2015 deal with Iran. Photo, Mogherini said Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has reconfirmed to her that Tehran will not pull out of the agreement if other signatories, not just France, United Kingdom, and Germany but also China, Russia, remain committed to its terms. Rouhani, however, did warn last week that he has instructed the country's Atomic Energy Agency to prepare to restart enrichment of uranium in a few weeks should the deal collapse completely. Iran's foreign minister is visiting China for talks following President Donald Trump's decision to scrap U.S. participation in the agreement over Iran's nuclear program. China's foreign ministry and state media said Javad Zarif was visiting Beijing on Sunday at the head of a large political and economic delegation to exchange views with relevant parties on the developments of the Iranian nuclear issue. China was closely involved in negotiating the agreement as one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council and has long been a close Iranian economic partner, buying about a third of Iran's oil shipments. Not only does Europe want to make the deal work, France, Germany and Britain indicated last week they will work collectively on a broader framework covering nuclear activity, the post-2025 period, ballistic activity, and stability in the Middle East, notably Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Yet, there is no doubting that European leaders are disheartened over Trump's decision, which comes after high-level lobbying in Washington from Macron, Merkel and Johnson. While Merkel and Johnson made no apparent headway with the U.S. president, there had been signs when Macron met Trump of potential compromise. Loading Macron said on April 25 that, "I think we are working towards a new deal, an overall deal that will enable us to deal with the nuclear issue, but also treat it together with other issues which are not being dealt with so far, that Trump has expressed dismay over." From this European perspective, the 2015 nuclear agreement would be only the first pillar of a broader framework that would also restrict Iran's regional influence, its ballistic missiles and its nuclear activities post-2025, when the existing deal expires. Trump had indicated last month such an agreement may be acceptable to him, saying to Macron that, "You know, in life you have to be flexible, and as leaders of countries, you have to show some flexibility. We could have at least an agreement among ourselves fairly quickly. I think we are fairly close to understanding each other." This U.S.-French dialogue came to nothing. And a key question for Europe is therefore how far to push back against Trump, as indicated by Le Drian, who said on Friday that the extraterritoriality of the U.S. sanction measures are unacceptable. "We will put in place the necessary measures to protect the interests of our companies and start negotiations with Washington." Europe took a similar path after Washington passed the ILSA legislation in 1996. Then Brussels approved measures to neutralize the law, asserting that the U.S. should not be able to impose such measures with such an extraterritorial effect. Despite this precedent, the reimposed U.S. sanctions could critically undermine EU attempts to preserve the Iran agreement. It may only be European firms with little or no economic interests in the U.S. who prove likely to want to trade with Iran given the potential risks, including fines from the U.S. Treasury. Taken overall, transatlantic tensions are now spiking again, and this could make a tricky G7 summit next month. While Europe will now double down to preserve the agreement, its future may be precarious. Andrew Hammond is an associate at LSE Ideas at the London School of Economics with Wire's politics analysis. Donald Trump